We'll start with making a mandala offering as a token for requesting the teachings, and then correcting a motivation with refuge and bodhicitta. Sashi poki junshi meto Kamri Rablingshi Nidegem Padi Sangye Shindu Mikte Owa Girokunamda Shin la Jehovah Shoidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniya Tayami
Sanji
Chonam Soge Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dami Kapsun Dagi Chushi Gibe Tsonangi Dola Penchi Sangye Dopa Sho
Sanji
Chonam
Chodan
Soge
Soji
Chonam La Chanchu Badu Dami Kapsun
Dagi
Dagi
Chushi
Chushi
Gibe
Gibe
Tsonangi
Tsonangi Dola
Dolan
Penchi
Benshi
Sangye
Sangye
Dopa
Dobara
Sho
Sho Sanji Chodan
Chonam
Soji
Soge
Chonam
Chonam La
La
Chanchu
Chanchu
Badu
Badu
Dami
Dami
Kapsun
Kapsun
Dagi
Dagi
Chushi
Chushi
Gibe
Gibe
Tsonangi
Tsonangi
Dola
Dolan
Penchi
Benshi
Sangye
Sangye
Dopa
Dobara
Sho
Sho Kanki tuzi ni zone tawa tamchi pambi chere tambi chun denze kodam jela chanze lo. Good morning. Anzo sanyemi kame sana lo chung sikti singzam rana ma shuwi sira tanda samdo di sumba dire lo chung yu sumba ni lo chung yu mita mima imba danyen parma sangen dinsum tome parsum konla chokri meba lab gute namki tejeb jisim jenla cham nyenji chiram meba gom gubi chiris
Masa de la Chazo Ponlen Chaktu Jadish de Marve.
ah kandas
You de Chi Chima Imbala Chakzun de Marwa. Some logic uni. Okay.
odi
That's all right. So we've been looking at a text that is called Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun. This is what we've been covering during the Sunday morning session. So we're going to continue today with the text, looking at where we are. So we started looking at this point, always training in 3 general points. In the previous session, we've covered the first couple of points, the first 2 points. Today, we're going to pick up on the third one. What page is it in the page 92 for those of you who have the book? So it says, thirdly, we should be impartial with the object of a mind training, whether it is human or inhuman, friend, foe, stranger, superior, inferior, or equal, or high, middling, or low. This is because we should practice compassion without distinction towards all sentient beings under the sky.
tadire tejidi tanganzu chedangi lo chokso long sombayina tenda nyokda chagores so ni sarda lo chokso long bayina nyokda ani bena 아니 세와 제대 또 참말로 로 촉수로 왕기 아니 세위래는 죽대봐 신라야 네바 제대디 촉롱기 차니 촉수로 돈이 연구여 봐. 다 촉수로서의 율디 아니 조디 다 마리바 라 무윤네 좀 마시베기 몽베기 시체체네 되니 아니 견산 땅난 라만다 다 추미지 남 이제세도 추미지세 다지 수시마인비 다 무유드 멘트비 견산인데 상도 땅치네 니다다 니년다지 아니 니 롱바치바다 직세저라 딘지 이차니 되니 작당기 온디다 로 베드 촉수만 바레스 다 딘지기 촉수만로와 촉수만로와야 아니 꿈라야 아니 찍봤다 투야기 로델레 럽고 그레스 라운데 당분이 있는 간절할 때 로드 매바 이네 델 러바이나 럽기 여바치 송고라스라
When a mind becomes partial, we face problems. When we harm others because of partiality. Mind that is partial with respect to others, it causes us to harm others. Partiality depends upon ignorance. Ignorance that does not understand reality or that misunderstands reality. And because of that misunderstanding of reality, we pay an incorrect attention to different things. We come up with false reasons, with facsimile of reasons, such as, for example, this is my friend, this is my foe, this is my country, this is somebody else's country, and so forth. We come up with those pseudo reasons in order to justify our partiality. So then, because of this partiality, we end up harming others. So therefore, in relation to this point, the training that we take up is training in impartiality. This is what we need to do. We need to train our mind in becoming impartial. So it's not something that we are naturally capable of doing so, because our mind currently is not naturally impartial. We need to train in making it impartial.
다 초리 매버디 간다 지레슬라디 탐칠라 미비 세와디 장바디 너 딘디지고 다 탐칠라야 미비 아니 장발라고 세발라고 그랬어 다 탐칠라 미비 세와 고야 가르스나 아니 탐치기 동안 되고 매봐 직바이 미치르스 아니 탐칠라 미비 장바고디 탐치기 대원 되버디 란다 신 참을로 대원 되버디 직바인자 안델 라고 그랬어 인지도 잠발이야. 저라면 올라오고 비치스.
So in what way do we practice impartiality? Well, we practice impartiality in recognizing, in training in love and compassion. So why do we need to train in love and compassion? Well, we recognize that all of us as living beings are equal. We are the same in not wanting suffering and pain. And all of us are equal in terms of seeking happiness. And for that reason, we develop a mind that is impartial.
다데니 데리다 비기다 가서다 율라 되는 사람도 샹라 되는 사람도 차니 아니 로디 초리 매바 탐jel이야 아니 다통에 잠바데 인지 라고 그랬어 율 샹라 되니 라고 그랬어 양 랑라 되니 랑기 기기 방자 랑기 니문들이 온데 채낭 초리와데 인치 님보 잠지 아니 랑기 니무트 방토고 말했어 잠기 무초기 니무 체다 매바 니무치 니보드 수 신네 랍고디 니무바테다 콘짱 탈바드 탐지 김베 람라 드지 고유동알라 조바체바 총비체르스.
Which means that relative to the object, relative to others, we develop impartiality, in which we need to regard everyone equally with love and compassion. So the text goes on and says, given that the disturbing emotions in our mind stream, the objects to be abandoned, are to be subdued, it is not sufficient to apply a partial or alternative remedy. We should train in understanding the way the antidotes are to be applied in general without partiality to the disturbing emotions. This is because all these disturbing emotions are obscurations to liberation and omniscience and are equally dragging us into the miseries of cyclic existence. We need to be impartial if we are to have an unbiased attitude towards all.
There's a deal on the touching Numu Chatameva, Numu Chi Nimbundro Sulaya, Labu Grace, Lava Chabalaya, the Numu singing the Monzin Tuquach, Ra, Numu Suzulaya, Kari Nuguyemi, Ra, and Chelaya never carry yemi, Pulaya never carry Yunguyemi, to Samalaya, Labgoyach. Kanjing Anzugi, Shiji Mambu Shujilaya, Labgoyagi, and 내단지 차대에 원자 왠지 흘러도지 그러 아니 방향체지네 뒤즈 초라 땅에 뒤즈로지 싸우니다 차금해 버지는 루식 때문에 간다 쇼기는 건다버도 다 받아진 장대로지 뭐도 뒤즈 매규지 딘 통투 고거서리스로
And as this section says, we need to keep our training not just with one or two afflictions, but we need to apply antidotes to all of our afflictions, not just remedy one or two, but to remedy all of them. We should do so because our own afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions, are detrimental to us on the short-term level, but also on the long term. We do need to see how detrimental they are to us. And when we see that, we come to see that we need to train in so many fields of knowledge. So if we become too relaxed, if we fail to administer those antidotes to our afflictions in thinking that there are occasions in which I need to train and occasions in which I do not need to practice that, it is a mistake. At all times during the day, we should still continue to work in training in developing antidotes to our afflictive states of mind.
대다 간지 아니 시진내려야 롬드기 대바 여바이나 아니 더 장야기 장거로 와서라 라가서 장바이나 찬산지 마시바이네 가주 장바 뒤쪽이 샘라야지 로데부르지 박페부르지 이게 참말로 연구를 싸움도 들어 수수로지 남지 강자다 로종 저 첸레 근데 뒤 텐상이 뭐는 텐상이 dontadoji nga konjo shogi chuzu ni de chega sumba dinji ni se on nga lamsa ya la ni chuzu ni sum ane jerum shi song dinji ta pe mangbu yo wanza ani nge chama tanda par de chanzang ta tu me ngi horta ba de chigi yera shogi ya lan chuzu ni sum der ningu gel des 아니 녀토도지 니 쿠기로 차거도 되느냐 샘 디니 아니 기부슈 용글로스 나라마제도 나니 고급 약슈 소르지 기부슈지 등이 무수 제바는 딜레그리 상글로스
In general, if there is something that we seek to know, a certain field of knowledge, if we want to know that, it means that we need to study, we need to train. And even if we, for the time being, cannot train to know everything about that field of knowledge, we still continue to train, to study. And when we keep doing that, there is a sense of happiness and comfort, or our mind becomes at ease in thinking that if I continue to train, if I continue to study, I will be able to master all of it. This is, Geshe says, this is the attitude that he brings into his daily practice. So he wakes up in the morning, and in the morning he dedicates a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, to still continue to go through the teachings of Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapas, that generated, he composed a vast body of teaching. So Geshe feels that if he, every day continuously will continue to read through Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, he'd be able to cover them to a great extent. No, so he does that every day, 2 or 3 hours in the morning. Then afternoon, his mind sometimes becomes a little bit sluggish. He does some reading, but then fatigue sets in, so he might have a short nana nap, and then he continues to do that. Anyway, Geshe feels that when you take it up like this, when your attitude is such that you just think that I'm going to do it regularly, and if I do it regularly, my knowledge will develop, my understanding will develop, and at the end I'll be able to master it all. It makes your mind happy, makes one's mind more comfortable, more at ease.
Nyumung said, so the Nyumung di Nyumung Chatameva, Penanganzugi, do stay on the Kaukalaya. The Mari was saying it is a Kandarajiki Pigilaya, Sam Ligi, Manzutoria Pekaburendos, Mariba. Tinani, that Danzi Mari was on the Tamu Shujinza, any Manzu Samlayal, Kandarajik Pigilaya, Yungu Meki. And Sonang Sam Yonti Pekaburos. The D Shichin, that Decha Kondra Soba, Shadan, the Kondron, Shadan Soba, that D Yonya D. Some down by the Sorguda, then did Sorgukadula Chik Ben and Decha sing the Chik Susulaya Gojo Rochik, Gunku you be number of change. Yanjik Shadan, the Kaukala Yangazel Shadan Mebaina. And it's so good to end up with loud or some sonan sort of Shadangan, Shadan Kid. To do some low any Levi Jelia, Semnoloya, Maki Bajetan, Pagmer Bajetan, and D. Jundelia, Tamandiba yon there, Mamushoji, and on the Shimju Cheba and near 2 years, Mamuji, and Loyan Shodruyavanza, and Nimu did Samalo, and the Pangoanza, and it Samalo Nimbole Drongi Shivagi, and Logile Labgo Grace, Nimbojile Labgo Grace.
Here, this section says that we need to remedy all of our afflictive states of mind, not just a small group of them, not just once or twice, but we need to do it with respect to all of them. Beginning with ignorance, and we can see, based upon our experience, how difficult it is to sense our own ignorance, to feel how ignorance operates. The nature of ignorance is so subtle that it's very difficult to sense how ignorance operates. It's easier to sense how anger and attachment operate. So with attachment, for example, attachment gives us that sense, that feeling as if we need to have it. It's good for us. We are required to have some attachment. And also with anger, we get that feeling, that sense that if we're not going to get angry, if we're not going to be hostile to some things, we'll be at loss with respect to some affairs. We're not going to be able to win. We'll be losing on different fronts if we're not going to have anger. So although the presentation of these afflictions is as if they are needed, we do need them, they are required for us. Still, when we look at those afflictive states of mind and how our mind feels when it is under the power of anger and attachment and so forth, we can see how unhappy we become, unhappy, not well, that there's so many problems and difficulties that arise because of these states of mind. And therefore, at no time we should become too lax with respect to these afflictive states of mind. All of them need to be abandoned. And if all of them need to be abandoned, we need to still train in developing the remedies, the antidotes for these afflictive states of mind.
Then tether con la rixu cheba mebas, on la digosos, 간지 뉴무 콘라야 저 마리 바이난다 데샤 있는다 셰단 있는다 아니 디콘라야 아니 릭스 체바메바 임페신이르다 아니 님보지 원라야 가르고레스 산 디고소 셰 템바니 장죽 본는 작도자스 아 장죽 제고 장죽 제고슬이야 장죽 제고슬이야 장죽 제 메릭슬이야 장죽 제한테 빵친 아니 본는데 다 작도 자고 그랬어.
And so it says we need to be impartial if we are to have an unbiased attitude towards all. If we were to abandon all of them, we need to be unbiased. So then the text says, and the text is the 7-point mind training, engage vigorously in forceful cultivation and abandonment. So this word forceful in Tibetan has that connotation of being aggressive, being wrathful, and so forth. So there are situations where we need to be fierce. We need to be fierce with abandoning the afflictions. It says here, engage vigorously in forceful cultivation and abandonment.
레전드만 연구다 셰송데스 칠 메다 메마이 콜라 장죽 자마론데스 다 메마이 바슬라온디 메마이 비 속착슬라 워다스라 메마이 비 신다 돌라 소바 딘딜라 코기요 마레스 다 메다 메마이 비 속착 콜라야 아니 장죽 자마론데스 장죽스는다 독습 제롱 마레스 대다기 콘드이 깬체진 메마이바 건진 대단 치마 파도 탐진데 큰도 손니 네버기비 깬도 존이치 mellayang rangi tingi kyambata niyola ningi changju chamronde jenang har pentawa tamje kyan temedu soni kondri kyandun drovicheros.
In general, the text says we are not supposed to employ force towards humans or inhuman beings, those which are not humans, which means we don't think of trees and stones and so forth as not being supposed to employ force with respect to those things. Well, we're not supposed to employ force with respect to animals, insects, and so forth, because it will provoke their anger, and the inhuman beings holding a grudge will harm us in this and future life, as well as the intermediate state. Amongst human beings, we should not behave forcefully towards those who have been kind to us, so even towards our relatives and servants. Otherwise, the help they have previously given us will become worthless and a cause for anger. Now, just note on the translation where it says that here we should not behave forcefully, it means that we should not be behave violently or aggressively, assertively, being full on in our attitude with respect to others.
wana sula 장죽 sula cha시나스 아니 술라야 아니 장죽 자고레스라디 실 콜위 예견 탐지 군중 레다 뉴몬비게 아 레다 뉴몬비 뉴몬기 레다 뉴몬기 싹 레 뉴몬기 나네자 당진 수인비 최 퇴숨 공숨 릉아 이숨기 쩌버 탐지기 늘라 장죽 차신 셴비 탑란 베바디 존죽리 다긴 늘라 현자신 콘두존이 율제디 남반딘디 뉴몬부 뉴몬 정제 마도소 단 세딘 생겨담 다긴 고제긴 라이 남바콘도 뉴몬 달은도 셰송바 따르 당진 뽕원당 제번 진비 로 콤바체발람 뱁토스.
So first off, the text says that we shouldn't be forceful or aggressive in our attitude to humans or inhuman beings. Then it says, towards whom then should we be forceful? In general, all the faults of cyclic existence arise from its origin, actions and disturbing emotions, karma and disturbing emotions, and actions are produced because of disturbing emotions. Since amongst all disturbing emotions, the misconception of self is chief, all of our spiritual practices of hearing, contemplation, and meditation involving our body, speech, and mind should be counteracted forcefully on eliminating it. With regards to the method by which to do this, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life says, to do this will be my sole obsession. Holding a strong grudge, I shall meet them in battle. So here, disturbing emotions can destroy our disturbing emotions, but not otherwise. It would be better for me to be burned, to have my head cut off and be killed, than ever bowing down to my enemies, the ubiquitous disturbing emotions. So we must persevere in combating the misconception of self and familiarizing ourselves with concern for others.
탐지 군종 레다 뉴몬비 끼그리 레다 뉴몬비기다 사그리스 코빈 얘기한 사그리스다 로 아니 딱 간르지 사그리스 해야지 다 로팅 sabto 간르 사그리스 라운디 아니 뉴몬기 온디 페나 몽바기 온디기 몽비 왕기 남도 피기 뜻지 유기 내초다 문진 비긴다 아니 균센 담은 통대야 디 왕기 아니 초롱기 삼바 로 착바당 담만로 소바기 디 왕기 아니 자와다 자와 담은들 여슈곤디 룽아 있음 자와 담은들 슈곤디 자와 디게 아니 니바 만다와치 셈 기띵려야 셈로 셈 기띵려야 아니 Niba Mandawachi, shadow warriors. The did the Saya so did this, and pen Shadang Konelani, Shadang Lansagi, Yul Penata, Budoch, any Sebaina, took down the soldiers, something, Condros and Conduangi, and it took down the Sebaina. And these took down so troubling. Any Chavadige, Rangi Sam Gitinlaya, and never Dukjach, Kanji, so troubling, Nibach shadow race, so troubling, Nibach. Piggy so jabal, then Rangi Sam Gitinlaya, so troubling, Nibach shadow race. That dig gain chenny, so troubling, Niba digi, gain chenny, Gemma. Ken shemba the Teondi, any rangi so any chegoyak Ram Madeva Yoyak, Gigin in the Sagres.
This section in the text says, towards whom we should be forceful. In general, all the faults of cyclic existence arise from its origin, karma and disturbing emotions. And karma or actions are produced or they accumulated because of disturbing emotions. So looking at the process by which we experience problems and suffering and samsara, all of these faults, the text says, all of the faults in cyclic existence arise because of karma and afflictions. Karma, which means actions, are accumulated because of disturbing emotions. We don't see that clearly. We don't see clearly that mechanism, but confusion arises in our mind. There's that sense of confusion or ignorance in which we observe different things, but our mind is not really clear with respect to what we see. It's not very clear. Then we come up with pseudo reasons for becoming angry at some or becoming attached to others. So we don't see clearly what the reality is. Anger and attachment rise. And through those motivations, we engage different actions, which in turn place potentials on our mind stream. Like, for example, motivated by anger. Anger, let's say, for example, anger or hostility focusing on an insect. You think that it's going to bite me, it's going to create some damage, it's going to bite me, therefore I will kill it. So if we kill others, we then place a negative potential on the mind stream, negative potential of killing others, taking others' life. And this potential in the future, when met with other conditions, gives rise to a certain result in which either we are being killed or we are made unwell, facilitated, or it depends upon potentials that we have placed before on the mind stream. So here, as this section says, all the faults of cyclic existence arise from its origin, actions and disturbing emotions, and actions or karma produced because of disturbing emotions.
Terza kanji ani shengi so trouble teni ani rangi gi sok shor koya ani rangi pigi ta chik ani thundula soba ani nyewala sobi ya nela keyaki ani gyusa roya tindi sungores tinza kanji dinza sosula ya ngonne thanege neshem bashi yimba di ani chagdam monsom di chagores 자 아니 장주원의 제거사디 배 아니 장주원의 제거사디 차담 모습 대차그랬어 차담 모습 디 원의 레버 지건서 디래야 큰선송진 디파 매버 소고야디 배 마스바더니 개첨부레 마도 엠피기게 속착지기 아니 지 소술이야 레버 지기도 삼미 아니 디 파 장죽 지야디 자원이네 말이스 디 아니 가주스기 내버 제바이네야 계란 세 디짬기 직 아니 리트라야지마도 계란 깨원이 깨월이야 아니 직 나송 내려 소바 아니 든지 내려 소바야 자원이 제두 말이스 이제 세 디기 직 아니 리 아니 초바잠 디 슈기 슈게 말이스 원의 깨월이야 장이디 미문인자 딘디들의 가도 있나야 남의 땅으로 봐 뒤저 까마치기 봐야냐 갑자기 봐 장주 제거하면 되라 아니 남의 땅으로 와지 어디리스 어디리 송을 와서라
We perform an action of taking life, which places a potential on a mind stream, and it depends upon that. In the future, we could either be losing our life, or at least we can say that we accumulate causes for birth in a miserable state of existence, being born as an animal or in another hellish state of existence, which means that accumulating such actions is exclusively only harmful to us. And this is created by our afflictive states of mind. And therefore, if there's something that we should be forceful with, that would be our own afflictive states of mind. So when we see the results that arise from our afflictive states of mind, we come to resent them and then to eliminate them. So we should be forceful with them, we should resent them and work to eliminate our own afflictive states of mind. So if we think that, well, if we have another living being in front of us and think that they are going to harm me and therefore I need to be forceful with them. Here, the text says that we shouldn't be forceful or aggressive with others. We should be more forceful with our afflictive states of mind. So should another living being harm you, you think that they're going to bite me, they're going to harm me, the worst thing that can happen is that they will end your life in this life. They will take your life, or you will lose your life in this life. But this other living being doesn't have the control of sending you to many future miserable states of existence in which you experience unbearable suffering. The worst case scenario would be that you would lose your life as a result of that living being in this life. But our afflictions have a far more detrimental effect. They can lead us to miserable states of rebirth for many lifetimes in the future. And therefore, the power is far worse than the power of other living being. And therefore, if there is something that we should be forceful with, it is our own afflictive states of mind. Rather than becoming dismissive about them and ignoring them, let them operate, we should be forceful with our afflictive states of mind.
당진 봉원당 현재번 준비 로 콤버 제발람 베토스 대다르 란진진 봉원라 데크베스 대다르 란진진 봉원라 데크베스 네 란진진 봉원디 가두송레스라운디 데콩 테마탈이야 당진 봉원당스 현재번 준비 로 콤버 제발람 베스 깔이야 당진 봉원다 세테다 란진진 봉원 들라세니
So the text concludes, we must persevere in combating the misconception of self and familiarizing ourselves with concern for others. So this is what the text says. In order to be forceful with afflictive states of mind at the end, what we need to persevere in are two things, bringing them into one practice. We need to combat our misconception of ourselves, the misconception of self, and also to familiarize ourselves with cherishing others, with concern for others.
아니 로종 참노노라야 란진진티 견레스 셴진진라야 콤고레스 다 슈송열다 이나 란진진디 데리세지 아니 무스 다 케바리기리 로송데기마도 오니 란진진디 타치도 돌자 임비 균세 란진진 고 원진 체진 베나가서 당진 방샤레세 당진 세딘데레스 아니 다도 트브즈샤니 대달도 트브는 짐비 로텔이야 당진 레스 라운디 당진래야 고차야지 로 고차야죠로스 다 란진진 라운디 제번진 라운디 란제번 진 라운디 피게 아니 자위게 랑 대와 민정이제다 랑 동화데 타와 민정이지 수치요 말다 수치요 말다 디 대참기 란진진의 샤나니 대빵 거리슬라는 용의 싸우니 매교로지 랑 진비 랑 아니 랑 대와 민지비 로치게 거리슬라는 디 용의 싸우니 매교로지 진짜 나랑 셈이야 아니 랑 진진데 칼라지 잘고나 사 지지나 내가 소소래 냠내 야보 매비 준세 로스 더 지치디기 독바지래셨어 진짜 단다 디나노라야 당진 봉원 당세 티당 오드랑 진진 봉원 들라 봉원 디구비세 디니부디 찍래야 자론디 된다 찍래 자론디 란진지세 당진 코라라야 자르고야지 차그메로 삼선다지 등아라 독바인스.
And then the text says, regarding what we must do to give up our self-centered attitude. So self-centered attitude is what we otherwise called self-cherishing. So before the text says that we should persevere in combating the misconception of self, to familiarize ourselves with cherishing others. And then it explains what we need to do in order to rid ourselves of cherishing an attitude of cherishing ourselves. And this is a really complicated point. Geshe finds this point complicated. So in many teachings, it is said that an attitude of self-cherishing, a self-centered attitude, is a faulty attitude. We need to accustom a mind with cherishing others. So many texts and scholars do say that self-cherishing is a fault. What we need to do is to cherish others, but then with respect to identifying precisely what self-cherishing is, it's not very clear. At least not to the same clarity as identifying what grasping at the self, the misconception of self is. So then when you look at the description of this affliction, cherishing, self-grasping, the misconception of self, there is a very precise description and identification of this affliction to the point in which you can become clear, resolute with respect to what it is and thinking, this is what grasping at a self is. Not to the same degree we have an identification of self-cherishing. So although we said that this is faulty, when you start to then think of what would self-cherishing be, a really precise description of what it is, well, first off, with respect to cherishing ourselves, we can recognize that all of us are seeking happiness, and none of us is wishing for suffering. So does it mean that ridding ourselves of self-cherishing would then make us not wish for happiness and make us wanting to have problems? If we eliminate our own self-cherishing, would that be the result? And if that would be the result, then it would be impossible actually to eradicate that sense of self-cherishing, because who would actually not wish for happiness and wish for suffering and problem? There would be no one that actually would want to do that. So therefore, in thinking of what would self-cherishing be, it becomes more difficult. At least Geshe said that maybe because he hasn't been able to take his personal practice to a greater depth, that this point is not very clear still. But just looking at the wordings of this section, first of all, it says we must persevere in combating the misconception of self. And in the next paragraph, it says regarding what we must do to give up our self-centered attitude. It says that here they're taken to be the same thing. So the text says, first of all, it uses the term misconception of self, and then it says that, well, in order to eliminate self-cherishing, it seems that it takes them to be the same thing, applying the last one to the first one. So maybe Geshe says that maybe this is one explanation of what self-cherishing is. It is a grasping at the self, a misconception of self.
These are the Ranjinzi, the Danzin de la Jashavana. Yadam Peshi, Dixari, some Kansana, the Kogiores, and in Gombulugi, Chisik Pombun Zia, Tesi de la Ganzios. Nanzi Yana Yanli, the Telian Kio in Slandi. Pombo Dembal Zimbi, Densi Mato Pardo, Ani Jigda Dotu Maris. Jigda Dotuman, Jigda Do Matubaina, and Teledeni Lesani, and in quality Ingris. Quality Ingris. Sombanza, that Danzingi Pigi, that Rangungi Tripatavi Loti, da Rangungi Matripalaya. Magom Pardo, da Rangun Tripatavi, Lord Yuchinjula, Pig, that Chagdan Kisaki, Shitamasuna, Tembu Shuji, Dedegich. Any co and Dim Mado Pardo, any chick, Lord Cholons, dry in Badoch, copy, Shitaka Danzindi, Chigiores, Ra. Any Danzingi, Kang Doctors on Nadi. Yudi rang nguli chung se kya madrupan thondi ani chi chagdan kesa gi yul lag ro yorochi ra ani dindiji sungu yores tiji rangchin zin se de dangzin la sha dangzin pang go gres dangzin pang bi tabdi da meba gom chipu mayimba ani shenje ban zimbi lo khom gors laundi shenjin zing lo yashudi chanju sem ani ta ninji da devi chanju sem la ya ani khomba cheba na dangzin pambi ge dangzin nimbo dame ba tobi lo te dam ani chanju sem nimbo la ya khomdi temba na ta di pam mutu ngenge nyum ba da shiji de ba che mesi banza sanji khomba tobe gyaja gyata ba ko kitu ganza tirang chego gres di chego gres di sungo gres ta.
So then if we look at this section again and we think that, well, when this section says regarding what we must do to give up our self-centered attitude, a self-cherishing attitude, we take here self-cherishing to mean grasping at the self, a misconception of self. So if we take it to mean the same thing, then just as Nagarjuna said in one of his texts, so long as you grasp at the aggregates, for that long you will grasp it I. you will grasp at the self. And so long as you grasp at the self, you will accumulate actions that result in birth. Which means that so long as we grasp at our aggregates to be truly existent, so long as we grasp at the aggregates to be truly existent, so long as we do not eliminate, eradicate our grasping at our body and mind, our aggregates to be truly existence for that long, we'll have a stable base for the arisal of a notion of self. And so long as we don't eliminate the strong sense of self, grasping at ourself, we'll have a stable base for the arisal of anger and attachment. So needless to say that so long as anger and attachment still arise in our mind for that long, we'll still have problems and difficulties. So then when it says here that we need to rid ourselves of our self-cherishing, and if we take that to be self-grasping, then our attitude of self-grasping, our misconception of self, makes us see things as if they exist completely objectively. But when we come to see that there's not even a single bit of objective existence, the objects, the basis for having attachment and anger to one object is completely lost. When we see that there's nothing that exists objectively, we lose or we eliminate our anger and attachment. And therefore here in this context, self-cherishing is taken to be the same as self-grasping, which is what we need to eliminate. In order to eliminate our self-grasping attitude, what we need to do is to develop an understanding of selflessness. So that's one thing that we need to take care of. We need to develop an understanding of selflessness. On top of that, the text says, we need to familiarize ourselves with concern for others or other cherishing attitudes. And the foremost other cherishing attitudes that we can develop is in terms of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So if we develop bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, we will take the development of cherishing others to an utmost extent. So if we develop the combination of the two, we cherish others through the development of bodhicitta, and we combine it together with the development of an understanding of selflessness. With the combination of these two, there is no affliction and imprints of the afflictions that can withstand that combination. We'll be able to abandon, to eradicate all of our afflictive states of mind, and also all the latencies, the imprints of our afflictive states of mind, cognitive obscurations and afflictive obscurations, all of them will be eliminated through the combination of bodhicitta and the view of selflessness.
Tirda Gunsen Tamji Shombarchas, Shesong Batar, Daniel Parma Yidong Mongi, Gunsen Rotani, Chagdan Kiva Tamji Shombarchatis. The Gunsen Tamji Shombar, Chagdan Kibi, Gunsen Tamji Shomgoris Lavda, and a Meva Sogoris. Did some Gunsen Tanmaris, Gunsen and the Geomaris. Gunsen Yanda Imbaina, Dembaro, Demba Imbaina, Meva Sogoes Kiomarota. The Demba Meva Sogoes Chagiobana, any Lojong di, any Tanguyu to the Mintumba Chagrota. Demba di, any Demba di, Dembi Salia, Shatu Mebaina, any Lojong di, any Muyu to Demba Chago Maris. In the Lojong di Muyu to Demba Jilia, Shitun Droguyobaina, any the big Chagdan Kibi, Gunsen, Tamji, Gunsen, Tana Imbati, drew to go with us.
So regarding what we must do to give up our self-centered attitude, the text says subjugate all the reasons for selfishness. We should suppress every instance of attachment and hatred that gives rise to exaggerated prejudices about friends, enemies, and strangers, the attractive and unattractive. So here it says that we should rid ourselves of pseudo reasons that we use in order to justify certain situations, which means that we must be able to distinguish between what is true and what is not true. If no distinction of what is true and what is untrue would be feasible, then also there would be no point in training our mind. There would be no point at all in taking up any training if you cannot really take something that is true to be true. If there's nothing that is true, which means that everything is just fake, or if there's no correct reason, true reason, if all the reasons that we use are pseudo reasons, it means that there is no basis whatsoever for training our mind. So here it says we should suppress every instance of attachment and hatred that gives rise to exaggerated prejudices about friends, foes, or strangers, the attractive and unattractive, which means that what it says here in short is that we should develop an insight into what is true and what is not true, and stop ourselves from using pseudo reasons, incorrect reasons for pursuing our partiality, or holding some as friends and others as enemies.
Tadini bena danganzu gulaya ta chagdang monsum ani kente chebada yongde yorasra tinza ani dasamlu gartangu zlabi bena kongchu jiek ra kongchu jiek kendang kongchu jibi gyunsen nibodi ani loga shago dos ranganzu ta mijigi susulaya pena gemo gibi nam gyurchik tembayna gemo gibi nam gyurchik tembayna ani digi control gibi kenlayan dosigres ro ko gemo gebayna ya ko control gibi kenlayan dosigres di control gibi günze mares ona di gemo gibi kenchene rangulaya control ya di günze kalden levares di yongo dasra.
Only slight conditions, small conditions are necessary for the arisal of anger and attachment in our own mind stream. For example, when we think of anger, so there are conditions for the arisal of anger, and also there are reasons for becoming angry. And these two, the reasons and the conditions, are different things, they're not the same things. So for example, it might be that someone is smiling at you, but that smiling person can still act as a condition for anger. But it doesn't mean that there are a reason for your anger. So for what reason are we getting angry at someone that is smiling at us? That person is a condition for anger, but what is the reason for getting angry with that person?
Tere dinangshing pena sik dugja jilawa that sik manyimbachi sik manyimba lawa that sik manyimba jilawa na tia kondu gibi kena ya ro chogres ro sigres that di kondu gibi gyunze reves na tia mares that di na that gemo ge dia kondu gibi gyunze mai sik manyimba susu amjolaya sik manyimba la ya dia kondu gibi gyunze mai na the Delhi Shambi Kondruki Gunsen Carriores, Rangulia Kondruki that Gunsen Calden Givaris, Rozo the Calden Givaris.
So that smiling person is not a reason for your anger. Or another example, someone is speaking negatively towards you. They're saying unpleasant words. So the unpleasant words are conditions for anger. But are they a reason for anger? They're also not the reason for becoming angry. So then we can say that a smiling person or unpleasant words spoken to you, both of them are conditions for anger, but they're not the reason for anger. So what other reason is there for becoming angry? Can we find another reason other than those two conditions for becoming angry?
수미직 남도기 더 계시니 공중 원에디 수미직 남도디 이거를 더 수미이제스나 bên 게모게야 딜 계시니 아니 큰알아야 찰리자고도 삼성기 그 경우에 찰리 말어 왔잖아. 이내야 디 남도기 아니 찰리 얘기도 삼비기 수미지 남도 질려봐나 안 람상 콘르기 그랬어. 책 많이 버질라오니 그가 독자 쉬우지. 다 소고 삼성도 그가 독자 질라고도 삼성기 남도 말래봐나 콘르기 말스. 딘디 남도 들려봐서 독자 쉬우지 픽식지 소소래 독자 쉬우지 소자스 기요 말어. 이내 독자 라기도 삼비기 아니 수미지 남도 디기 아니 콘르기 그랬어. 딘자 파쇼마디 콘르기비 깨는 로스와지 이내 콘르기비 균센디 아니 소수길이야 대봐 소수길이 남도 디야 아니 균센 양 타버지 마인 봐 균센 따는지 토네 아니 랑길이야 콘르기기 여바디 네버도 라트고야지 디송도 아스라.
So if we wonder, for what other reason are we getting angry? Well, the reason is an incorrect mental attention, a certain conceptual process, a conception that is an incorrect mental attention that we pay to either the person that is smiling at us or to the unpleasant words that have been spoken. So someone is smiling at us, and with our conceptuality, incorrect attention, we think that the person is ridiculing me. So as a result, we get angry. Negative words are being spoken to us, and we think with that incorrect attention, that conceptuality, they're treating me so badly. So these attitudes are causes of anger, that incorrect mental attention, which means that it is a pseudo reason that we use, not a real reason, but a pseudo reason that we use that justifies our anger. So this pseudo reason that justifies anger for us is found in our own mind stream, in our own mind. It is an incorrect reason that we use, not a correct reason, but incorrect reason for finding anger a justified reaction. So this is what we need to understand, that when we think that anger is a justified response, we think that it is a justified response because of incorrect mental attention involving with pseudo reasons.
대신에 딘지기다 콘르기비 균센 따난디 수미지디 마방 바르도 마도 바르도 아니 깽 가르다 쳐봐이네 콘르기 쓰와인자 아니 수미지 남도 다 도고 그랬어 다 수미지 남도디 단지시바는 당점 랑진진 될 때니 아니 남도들 레고 그랬어 갈 두자치서 갈 직삼고도 세비 나세게 비 유딩니 트버다베기 차딩이 로디 시체네 아니 수미지 남도들 레고한자 아니 딘디기 당진디 마도 바드 아니 수미지 남도 끼고 그랬어 다 당진 뒤도 발아야 당진 뒤게 다 치들 점반난신기 태는 내다 마네기 samlotani ani chetar zambatar thyanla da maneba matba theliya ani ngunjene dilya ani lo theda pha chi khasoda ani shujigbe kom di mathe pardo ani dangjen di dos tugo mare tinza dagmeleya khomgore se dagme gomgore se nenga samadiganle de horas ro.
And until we rid ourselves of that incorrect mental attention, it will still be possible for us to become angry. And that incorrect attention that we pay to objects depend upon our self-grasping. Or here is also, as the text says, self-cherishing. We apply the meaning of self-cherishing to self-grasping. So long as we have that misconception of self for that long, we'll still continue to have an incorrect mental attention. So for example, we regard ourselves, we grasp at ourselves to exist completely objectively in the object. And this is the basis for the arisal of an incorrect mental attention. So until we rid ourselves of the grasping at ourselves to exist objectively, until we eliminate that, we'll still have an incorrect mental attention. So what we need to do is to rid ourselves of the basis for incorrect mental attention. And the basis is grasping at a self. So long as we grasp at a self to exist exactly in a manner that a misconception of self adheres to, for that long we will have that basis. So what we need then to start doing is to question the mode of grasping at ourselves. So we grasp ourselves as if we exist completely objectively in the object. When we start to question that and we develop the understanding that I do not exist in a way that my own misconception of self grasp it, my own grasping of the self grasp it, I do not exist in this way. This is not the way that I am. This is not me, not in the way that self grasping is grasping it. Until we can elicit a thorough and deep understanding of not existing in a way that a grasping is holding it to be, we'll still have an incorrect mental attention.
Dindi toksum shigo ga shamba chade chi korwi chi konla ya ngeba yo maris ra kyarangi yabu re samba de shoki yabu tonna konda dukja tonde ya kyaran dukja re samde ya di shoki dukja tonna konda yabu tonde ya kanji del ya ngeba tsawa ni meba insa ani chinyum shago ya sem de be ani chinyum tola ya shago ya chi nenga chi sungu do asra.
So we need to familiarize ourselves with that notion of not existing in a way that our misconception of self is adhering to. And then it says, this is because worldly phenomena in general are unreliable. And relations between friends and foes in particular are uncertain. So with respect to the uncertainty of phenomena in samsara, these worldly phenomena, there are things that are good in the morning and turn out to be bad in the evening. Things that are bad in the morning and turn up positively in the evening. In that sense, there is no certainty with respect to these worldly phenomena. It also says relations between friends and foes in particular are uncertain. In drawing from Nagarjuna's friendly letter, it says, your father becomes your son, your mother your wife, and your enemies become friends. The opposite also takes place. Therefore, in cyclic existence, there is no certainty at all.
고왕알에 드디마 로샤인데 당번이 지를 군조숨 캔럽단 춘지 예비 라마단 파마소 진지 내남라 멜레버 총우치나 딕시지비 콘트로소 마셔와 자오 니버 뒤콘도 란다 시직도 뒤에 남을 뉴무기위 고마미 자라도 종어 숨바 꺄춘 콘라 젠도스 나와라 멜레버 총우초나 히니 이라마 초와탈라 자라도 장을 자오 Shibarangri par chiyang cheba meja sur nage wi ri wongwe tela miksukani jango de shedangi memba ni ninji lental chesa wa dar jongni cheo ngaba rangla de chi meja min thonga zangi mundeji ikar mongwe ri yebe tedala cheda du karni gomba chade kondro jome goshindu jongni wi cheros.
There is also a saying, construct a thought when the danger is greatest. It is necessary to meditate on the factors which cause your spiritual practice to decline. So in that vein, the text says, this is again the 7-point mind training. Train consistently to deal with difficult situations. And the text explains 5 kinds of difficult situations. Firstly, since even slight misbehavior towards the 3 jewels, your abbot, spiritual master, parents, and so forth, who are all very kind to you, is extremely serious, you should be careful not to lose your temper with them. Secondly, as there are many opportunities for disturbing emotions to arise in relation to the members of your family, because you live with them at all times, This requires special training. Thirdly, you should train yourself particularly in relation to everyone, whether an ordained or layperson who appears to be your rival. Otherwise, when even a small misfortune befalls them, it may create satisfaction in your heart. Fourthly, you should make a point of training yourself in relation to those who accuse you when you have done nothing against them, because there is a risk that, as the saying goes, if the fire of hatred burns, the moisture of compassion will dry up. Fifthly, you should pay special attention in your meditation to those people, the mere sight of whom, or the mere sound of whose names you dislike, even though they have done nothing against you. Because of this, there is a great danger of becoming angry with them.
대도 유콘라 냠냠보 원들라 원은 되고디스 겐 현달라 되면자 시송디스 제대로 tö송소 관계 고른 주게 튼겐 좀나 원라 만좀나 모와샤다 인라 추dir 고슈디 힌타바니 로종 찍라 대다 만좀나 댕이 겐두치디 공벌체나 친한겐가게 강화와 냠가와다 파사와 메지 장주기 샘라 푸르춘비 복 템번 유로스
In order to acquire equanimity towards such people, the text says, don't rely on other conditions. In general, whatever you are practicing, such as listening or contemplation, if favorable conditions are assembled, it will be successful. And if the conditions are not met, it will fail. Yet, if someone who enters into this practice and engages sincerely in mind training is able to see the lack of favorable conditions as a stepping stone, he will have no fear of external or internal obstacles and will make great advancement towards the awakening mind.
다드니 냠닝 기체 졸음 투고 차고서 시템바니스 dombogyularanso shas terda dige tan lojong kavlaya chik bigi lu namgyurdan ani chik ngag namgyurla soba ani chalula soba didi ani zo mares to zo bigi ani chik mikkonda thumba chik toni rogoya chik ani zo di nangi semgin thumba gyurkores thumba gyurla ranso shas Jolam de ranso shachini semgun dumba gyurtukuyati lojong namga nimbores chesong des.
It is clear that you need steadfast behavior in the course of your practices. Texts transform your attitude but maintain your natural behavior. And that when we train our mind, we undertake this practice of mind training, rather than starting to behave in a way that is drastically different, changing our physical behavior and our verbal behavior, the main attitude here, the main emphasis is placed on transforming our mind. This is the main thing that we need to do. So in that sense, we should still act in a way that conforms with others, but the main emphasis should be on training our mind. At no time should your thoughts be separated from becoming acquainted with the awakening mind.
Resamba chanjugi sem tukundu kombarchebada mendershi lunga gichoba sanyi ki namba mayimba kunda mentemba mebe sulalabar chawos.
So at no time should your thoughts be separated from becoming acquainted with the awakening mind. There should be no sudden change in your physical and verbal conduct, and your behavior should not differ from that of ordinary people.
Yan chegao chimbi shangani lojongwa tamji chirmunsin chongla dengi chechewa chi gusongs.
The great Chekawa said that all our practices of mind training should be inconspicuous to the outside world, but in reality, there should be great improvement.
Terda lojong ngoni ji ani lojong chingi jimba na 그 시신 들어와 염충 체진 로기여서라 왔으라 안데 지 체와드 랑상 지 이제 체기 연동도 체진 밀라 때인데 공이 줘라더라 아니 지 민들이야 피게 다차자 슈 체대 공이 줘라 디게 오늘 로종도 체투여서 말았어 오늘 로종 체투이 디 아니 지 넘버디 아니 염충 지기톤 문신 춘충 지기톤 전다 샘 딩기야 아니 로제 첨부 아니 제퉁이 간지 최체와서는 다지 아니 고전 라부친 조퉁이 아니 상로 땅투나 로종레스 총 된지 처지 고송스
So if we do take mind training practice to heart, we should become serene, pacified, and tamed, rather than behaving in a certain way in the company of others, trying to communicate to them that we are such great practitioners. Here it says that we should actually remain humble, not develop that sense of pretense in the company of others, because if we do so, this is not really a practice of mind training. When you remain humble and still allow your mind to increase and develop, this is a genuine practice of mind training.
다드니 로종기 고르슈니 젠균 조도 모론시 템바네스 양라 냠바 점차 데자 셰송데스 콜롱 кен 차베 메담 마이 군지 켄 조바 빵바차오스
When you have entered into the practice of mind training, you should not criticize or point out other people's faults. The text says, don't speak of others' incomplete qualities. You should give up criticizing human and inhuman beings out of spite. Then you should not point out their mistakes.
데자 로종 고라 슈그네 셴균 조도 모론 세디 로종 고라 슈다마 슈디 수수수 데바라스 수치게다 지 아니 짱가 체체 고코르탄체 캐나 로종 고라야 슈생이지 요마라스라 원이 로종라야 팅이지 바나 그 수수 데바다 되니 아니 야티야치 다디 수수 데바다 되니 야 슈크사비 제라 아니 로종 고든디 랑균 세야들이 마도 학든디 랑기 아니 샘기 견디 종야 디리 마도 아니 셴기 룽아기 견 세제니 디 링 조야디 아니 캐란 레가 마레스 디 캐란 레가 마레스 디 제고 마레스 디펜도요 마레스
So once we enter, in a sense that once we engage in mind training text, mind training practice, sorry, it says that we should stop criticizing others, pointing the faults of others. So to enter a mind training practice, to engage that, is completely up to us. It's not that someone can force us, can bully us, can push us to training our mind. Whether we train our mind or not train our mind, or whether we engage with that, it's completely up to us. But once we do enter this practice of mind training, what we should do is to purify the faults in our own mind, our own faults, rather than digging out and speaking of others' shortcomings or others' faults. This is not the purpose of mind training. This is not the purpose of taking up this training. This is the point in taking up this practice of mind training, engaging in it, is to purify, to eliminate our own faults.
다드니 믹세로지 직송고다 다 콜롱 견 차베 메담마 인군지 견 조바 빵바 차오세디 자위기 셴기 견 줘야디 셴기 룽하기 견 줘야디 캐랑기 내가 말했어 디 나네 짱 콜롱 견 차바스 라운디 콜롱 견 차바스 라와이나 랑기 데버다 민팀비 베나다치 미지게 아니 남길 때나리 피게제시나리 아니 소수긴 데버 마보디 람산치 아니 칙두자 라브데 남규텐데 저 디콜론 괜찮아버렸어 디왕기 콜론 디온도 손네 아니 계랑 변나 아 계지 야우시면 세서다 아니 계랑 섭다 야우면 세드 참말로 아니 콜론 괜찮아be 왕그 손바리 딘지리디 빵고 그랬어.
This section says you should give up criticizing human and inhuman beings out of spite. And you should not point out the mistakes. When it says out of spite, which means out of problems in your own motivation. In that, when you react to a certain situation, when you criticize others, you might think that I'm doing so because either I don't like their body language, just the way that they come across to me, I don't like it, or I find out what they're saying to me is displeasing, I don't like it. So this type of motivation is faulting, criticizing others.
takulong yabu yabana chik charangi chik chedan tigmuldo ani keje chedan tigmuldo phimala phensam konelani ta jo chowa dindi ta yongros ta ina ya zo rani lojong la shugo godendi ani rangi lojong ya inza ani kaddu ina kyen chesa di rangi lola ya sha jed rangi lola sha ni ani kyen se ani di janya ge tabshila ya bev ko ya ti ani di zores.
So here the emphasis on doing so out of spite. But then it could be that when someone is treating you in a certain way, so the physical expression is not appropriate, what they're saying is not right. If you have this genuine intention to be of benefit to them, you can point it out. Right, so when the text says you shouldn't do it out of spite, it means that you shouldn't do it with the wrong motivation. If you are going to point out faults in others, you should do so with the intention to be of benefit to them. However, still, when we think of a mind training practice, the main emphasis in a mind training practice is addressing the faults in our own mind. So there could be situations in which you can point out somebody else's fault. It could be helpful, but still, the main emphasis is not to find faults in others. The main emphasis is to correct the faults in our own mind. This is what we do in a mind training practice.
간지 아니 셴기견 세대바이나 랑라야 직 머가스 망부 차용하지 라 어디디 간지 아니 콘트로케서 율 망부 용대야 간지 머가스 망부 용대야 디게 펜토 매바지마다 펜토야지 소술에 펜토야지 용야 백하고 차고 그랬어 딜리 랑기 샘기견 세바이나 랑기 샘기견 세제 and these some so na di chug susu yagi shujin royachi ra benata tulo tubana tulo di thakba kha yoba dipil teni khutri baina yasha gyada ma zama chagras o dir di sore chegore sungorda.
So if you deliberately look for faults in others, you will become unpopular. Others will dislike you and you will get angry with them. They will get angry with you. It's not going to help you. It's going to actually make your life harder. So the point in the mind training is to purify our own faults, to clean them up. And we can attain great improvement if we focus on that, just like washing a piece of cloth, washing it clean, washing the faults from our own mind. So this is what we need to do in our practice of mind training. All right, let's leave it here for today. We're going to recite the dedication verses, dedicating all the virtue, all the merit that we've accumulated in this session. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow. May that which is arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Jamrasic, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. Savior of the Snowland teachings and transmigratory beings who makes extremely clear the path that is unification of emptiness and compassion. To the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You uphold the Sibiru's moral way who says in the manifold all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majanath's victorious doctrine, who mercifully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels. Several of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.